I thought watching my mom fall in love again would help heal our family after Dad's death. Instead, her boyfriend tried to erase every trace of my father, manipulate our finances, and turn my own mother against me. But when I discovered his secret past, I made sure he lost everything. This is how I destroyed the man who tried to destroy my family's memory. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Lennox and I'm 19 years old. 2 years ago, my world shattered when my dad dropped dead from a massive heart attack. He was only 46. One minute he was laughing at dinner, telling one of his terrible Navy jokes, and the next minute he was gone. Just like that. No warning, no goodbye, nothing. I called him Pops. Everyone else called him James, but to me and my little brother Finn, he was always Pops. He built our house with his own hands, planted rose gardens in the backyard, and collected vintage records that he'd play on Sunday mornings while making pancakes. He was the kind of dad who showed up to every school event, who taught me how to change a tire and balance a checkbook, who made our family feel safe and whole. When he died, my mom Diane completely fell apart. She's 45 and she'd been with my dad since she was 22. He was her entire world. For months after the funeral, I'd find her crying in his closet, holding his old Navy uniform. She stopped cooking, stopped gardening, stopped being mom. So I stepped up. I was 17, but I became the one holding our family together. I made sure Finn got to school. I handled the bills. I held mom while she sobbed. Slowly, painfully, we started healing. It took over a year, but mom finally started smiling again. She joined a book club at the local library, started wearing makeup again. I was so relieved to see her coming back to life that when she told me she'd met someone, I was actually happy for her. His name was Garrett. He was 48, charming, and he made my mom laugh. The first time I met him, he brought flowers and complimented the house. He told stories about his consulting business and asked me about college. He seemed genuinely interested in our family. I remember thinking that maybe, just maybe, this was okay. Maybe mom deserved to be happy again. Maybe we all deserved to move forward. That was 8 months ago and God, I was so stupid. The red flags started small. Tiny comments that felt like pinpricks but not quite painful enough to react to. Garrett would say things like, "You know, Diane, it's important to move forward or we can't live in the past forever." At first, I thought he was just trying to help mom heal. But then he suggested we move dad's photo from the living room mantel to my bedroom. "So your mom can heal properly," he'd said, touching her shoulder. "She needs to be able to look at her living room without constant reminders of grief." Mom agreed. I watched her take down the framed photo of Dad in his navy dress blues, the one that had sat on that mantel for 18 years, and carry it to my room. My stomach twisted, but I didn't say anything. What could I say? Mom deserves happiness. She deserves to heal. I was being selfish, wasn't I? Holding on to grief too tightly? Garrett started spending more nights at our house. Then he was there every night. Then, 5 months ago, he just moved in. No real discussion. His stuff appeared in Dad's closet. His toiletries filled the bathroom. His coffee mug sat where Dad's used to sit. That's when the reorganizing started. Garrett said the house needed updating and freshening up. Dad's favorite reading chair, the worn leather one he'd had since before I was born, went to storage. "It's falling apart," Garrett said. It wasn't. Then Dad's record collection disappeared. Over 300 vintage albums, some of them rare, some of them gifts from his own father. "I donated them to charity," Garrett announced one Sunday. "You weren't listening to them anyway." I lost it. I actually yelled at him, asking how he could do that without asking us. Garrett just looked at me with this calm, condescending expression and said, "You're being too sensitive, Lennox. They were just old records collecting dust." The worst part? Mom defended him. "He's right, sweetie. We weren't using them. Garrett's just trying to help us move on." Move on. Those 2 words became his mantra. Move on from Dad. Move on from our memories. Move on from everything that made our family who we were. Garrett started calling himself the man of the house. He'd say it casually, like it was a joke, but it never felt like one. He began making decisions without consulting us. Rearranging furniture, changing internet passwords, deciding what we'd have for dinner. Then came the financial stuff. He convinced Mom to add him to her checking account. The account that held Dad's life insurance money. $250,000 that was supposed to secure our future, pay for Finn's and my college, and keep Mom comfortable. Garrett said it was practical since he was helping with bills now. Within weeks, he bought himself a brand new truck. $45,000. For the family, he claimed, even though Mom had a perfectly good car and I had Dad's old sedan. I felt sick about it, but Mom just smiled and said, "He knows about finance, honey. Your father would want me taken care of." Every time I questioned something, she'd invoke Dad. As if Dad would have wanted this stranger spending his money and erasing his memory. I started making excuses for my own discomfort. Maybe I wasn't ready to see Mom with someone else. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I needed therapy to deal with my grief better. I was going to the local university, trying to focus on my classes, but every weekend I came home felt worse. Then I came home one Friday to find Dad's home office completely transformed. Dad's office had been his sanctuary. His Navy medals hung on the wall. His certificates and commendations. Photos of his ship. His old desk where he'd helped me with homework for years. All of it was gone. Garrett had turned it into his office. Sleek, modern, impersonal. Dad's medals, his certificates, his personal items were all shoved into boxes in the garage. I broke down. Completely fell apart. I confronted Mom, crying, begging her to understand what this meant. And she looked at me with frustration and said, "Lennox, we can't live in a museum. Garrett needs a workspace. You're being dramatic." Garrett stood behind her, his arm around her shoulders, and he actually smirked at me. "Your daughter needs to learn about respect and boundaries, Diane." I retreated to my room and cried until my eyes swelled shut. And even then, even after all of that, I wondered if they were right. Maybe I did need therapy. Maybe I was being toxic, holding on to the past too hard. That night, I heard Garrett on the phone in the hallway. His voice was low but not quite low enough. "Yeah, the daughter's a problem, but I'm working on it. Once I get Diane to see she's toxic, we can finally have our life." I sat on my bed, staring at the boxes of Dad's photos I'd rescued from the garage, and something cold settled in my chest. But I pushed it down. I told myself maybe I was the problem. Maybe I needed to try harder to accept him. Maybe. I should have trusted my gut right then, but I didn't. Not yet. 3 months crawled by, and everything got so much worse. Garrett stopped pretending to be nice. He'd criticize me openly, right in front of Mom, and she'd just sit there looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. One night at dinner, I got emotional talking about something Dad used to say, and Garrett actually laughed. "Still crying over your dad? You need to grow up, Lennox. It's been 2 years. I looked at Mom, waiting for her to defend me. She just stared at her plate and changed the subject. That's when I knew I'd lost her completely. Finn, my 16-year-old brother, had gone almost silent. He barely spoke at dinner anymore, just ate quickly and disappeared to his room. I'd catch him crying sometimes, but when I asked if he was okay, he'd just nod and close his door. The college fund incident happened on a Tuesday. I was checking my account online, the one Dad had set up for my education. $40,000. Except now it showed $25,000. $15,000 had vanished. I stormed downstairs, my laptop clutched in my shaking hands, and demanded to know what happened. Mom couldn't look at me. Garrett answered instead. "I needed it for a business investment. It'll triple in 6 months, then we'll put it back." He said it so casually, like he'd borrowed $20, not my entire future. "That's my college money. Dad saved for years. And now it's working for you," Garrett interrupted. "Your father would have wanted smart investments, not money sitting around doing nothing." I turned to Mom, begging her with my eyes to see what was happening. Instead, she started crying. "Why can't you trust him, Lennox? Why can't you just be happy for me? I've been alone for 2 years. 2 years. Doesn't my happiness matter?" She turned it around on me, made me the villain for questioning him. And then Garrett delivered the killing blow. "Your father would be ashamed of how selfish you've become." Those words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stumbled backward. I went to my room and didn't come out for the rest of the night. But even then, even after he'd stolen from me and weaponized my dead father against me, I wondered if maybe he was right. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I was the problem. 2 weeks later, Mom announced they were engaged. She showed me the ring with this desperate hope in her eyes, like she needed my approval to be happy. I tried. God, I really tried to be supportive. I hugged her and said congratulations, even though my stomach was churning. Garrett immediately started planning to sell the house. Our house. The house Dad built with his own hands, board by board, nail by nail. We need a fresh start, Garrett announced at breakfast. A place that's ours, not haunted by the past. Mom nodded along like this made perfect sense. She didn't even ask Finn and me how we felt about it. When I finally pushed back, saying this was our home and Dad built it himself, Garrett's mask slipped completely. "Your father is dead," he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "He's dead, Lennox. I'm here now. I'm alive. Time to accept reality and stop living in a shrine to a ghost." Mom didn't defend Dad. She didn't defend me. She just sat there and her silence said everything. But the thing that finally shattered something inside me was the memorial garden. After Dad died, I'd planted a small garden in the backyard with his favorite roses. Yellow ones. Dad loved gardening, and those roses were my way of keeping him close. I tended them carefully, talked to them sometimes like Dad could hear me. I came home from class one Thursday afternoon and the garden was gone, completely destroyed. In its place sat a massive hot tub, still wrapped in plastic, with Garrett standing next to it looking proud of himself. I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't catch my breath. I started screaming at him, calling him horrible things, tears streaming down my face. Mom came running outside, and I waited for her to finally see what he'd done, to finally choose me and Finn and Dad's memory over this monster. Instead, she grabbed my shoulders and said, "It was just some plants, Lennox. You're being hysterical. Calm down. Just some plants. Dad's roses were just some plants." Garrett crossed his arms and smiled. "Maybe you should find your own place if you can't respect our decisions." Our decisions. Like this was their house. Like Finn and I didn't exist. Mom scheduled a family dinner a week later to clear the air. She begged me to come, to try one more time. I almost refused, but Finn gave me this pleading look, so I agreed. Garrett drank 3 glasses of wine during dinner. With each glass he got bolder. He started talking about Dad, and not kindly. Heart attack at 46? Man didn't take care of himself. Left you all vulnerable. Left you with barely anything. My hands clenched into fists under the table. Dad took perfect care of us. He loved us. Garrett laughed, actually laughed. "Love doesn't pay bills, sweetheart. Your dad was soft. Weak. Good thing Diane has a real man now. A man who knows how to build actual wealth, not just hammer some boards together and call it a house." Finn stood up so fast his chair fell backward. He grabbed his water glass and threw it at Garrett, water splashing across his expensive shirt. Then Finn ran upstairs and I heard his door slam. I expected Mom to check on her son. Instead, she yelled up the stairs, "Finn, you get down here right now and apologize to Garrett." Something inside me went completely cold and still. I looked at my mother, this woman I didn't recognize anymore, and I saw clearly for the first time. She'd chosen him. Completely. She'd trade both her children for this man who was destroying everything Dad built. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood up, excused myself calmly, and went to my room. That night, I stopped making excuses. I stopped wondering if I was the problem. That cold, still feeling sharpened into something else entirely. Anger. Real, focused, righteous anger. I remembered something Garrett had said weeks ago about his investment expertise and his business success. But Dad had taught me to trust my instincts, and my instincts screamed that something was wrong. So I opened my laptop and started digging. I found Garrett's social media profiles first. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all carefully curated to show success. But on one older profile, he'd used a different last name. Mulvaney. Garrett Mulvaney. I searched that name with his age and city. The court records loaded slowly. When they finally appeared, my heart started pounding. Fraud charges. 8 years ago, he'd stolen $180,000 from elderly clients at an investment firm. Plea deal. Probation. His financial license was revoked. There was a restraining order from his ex-wife. Multiple debts. Multiple judgments against him. Garrett wasn't a successful businessman. He was a broke con artist who'd targeted my vulnerable, wealthy widow mother. Every single thing clicked into place. The rushed move-in. The financial control. Isolating me and Finn. Erasing Dad. It was all calculated. I sat there staring at my screen, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Then I picked up my phone and called Uncle Perry, Dad's best friend and a lawyer. "Uncle Perry, it's Lennox. I need your help. And I need you to keep this secret from Mom for now." My hands were steady. My voice was calm. Dad had taught me to protect this family, to be strong when it mattered most. Time to finish what Dad started, I whispered after hanging up. Uncle Perry met me at a coffee shop the next morning. I showed him everything I'd found, and I watched his face go from shocked to furious. That son of a... He stopped himself, took a breath. Lennox, this is serious. Your mother could lose everything. She's already losing everything, I said quietly. I need to save her from herself. We spent 2 weeks building an airtight case. Perry pulled Garrett's complete criminal history, financial records, everything. Turned out Garrett had withdrawn $89,000 total from Mom's accounts over 10 months. The investments were pure fiction. He'd paid off gambling debts, bought luxury items, even sent money to another woman. Perry found that woman too. Her name was Portia, and according to Facebook, she was also engaged to Garrett. He was running the same con on her simultaneously. Perry contacted Garrett's probation officer. Managing other people's money violated his probation terms. The officer was very interested in what we'd found. But I didn't want Garrett just arrested. I wanted him humiliated the way he'd humiliated my family. So I came up with a plan. I went home and apologized. It nearly killed me, but I looked Mom and Garrett in the eyes and said, "You're right. I've been holding on to the past too tightly. I'm sorry I've made things so difficult." Garrett's smile was pure victory. He actually patted my head like I was a dog. "That's mature of you, Lennox. I knew you'd come around eventually." Mom hugged me, crying with relief. "Oh sweetie, I'm so glad. We can finally be a real family now." I suggested we have a proper engagement dinner for Mom and Garrett. "Let's invite some of Mom and Dad's old friends to show our support." Mom loved the idea. Garrett loved the attention. The dinner was set for Saturday night. I invited Uncle Perry, 3 of Dad's Navy buddies, our neighbors from both sides, and several family friends who'd known us for decades. People who'd loved Dad. People who knew what our family used to be. Saturday arrived. Garrett showed up wearing a new designer suit I knew cost at least $2,000 of Mom's money. He was charming, shaking hands, telling stories about his business ventures. Everyone was polite, but I caught the Navy guys exchanging looks. They sensed something was off. Halfway through dinner, I stood up with my wine glass. "I'd like to make a toast." Garrett beamed at me. Mom looked so happy. Finally, her daughter was accepting her new life. "Garrett," I said, my voice steady and clear, "you've certainly changed our lives these past 10 months. He raised his glass, soaking in the attention. "You've spent $89,000 of my mother's money." The room went dead silent. Garrett's smile froze. I pulled out a folder and started reading. "Criminal fraud conviction, 8 years ago. You stole $180,000 from elderly clients. You were disbarred from providing financial services." I looked up at him. "You're also currently on probation, which you violated by managing my mother's finances." Garrett stood up. "This is ridiculous. Diane, tell her." "Sit down," Uncle Perry said from across the table. "We're not finished." I continued. 5 maxed out credit cards in default. Restraining order from your ex-wife for financial abuse. Oh, and this is my favorite part. I pulled out printed Facebook photos. Your fiancée Portia. You proposed to her 6 weeks ago. Same time you proposed to my mom." Mom made a sound like a wounded animal. Her face had gone completely white. "The investments you claimed to make with our money. Gambling debts. The business consulting? Doesn't exist. You targeted my mother because she was a vulnerable widow with life insurance money. You isolated her children, erased my father's memory, and bled her dry." Garrett lunged for the door. 2 of Dad's Navy buddies blocked his path. These were men who'd served in combat. Garrett wasn't going anywhere. "We've already filed charges," Perry announced. "For fraud, theft, and probation violation." Right on cue, 2 police officers walked in. I'd called them an hour earlier. They arrested Garrett right there, in front of everyone. He screamed at Mom as they handcuffed him. "Diane, tell them. You gave me that money. You wanted me to have it." Mom just stared at him like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she finally was. The next few weeks were brutal. Perry helped Mom press full charges and freeze all remaining accounts. We recovered $52,000. The rest was gone. Garrett took a plea deal and got 3 years in prison. Mom fell apart completely. She had to start therapy twice a week. She apologized to me and Finn constantly, sometimes crying so hard she couldn't speak. "You tried to tell," she'd say. "You tried, and I called you toxic." What kind of mother does that? It took months, but slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding. Mom and I restored Dad's memorial garden together, planting new yellow roses. We brought all his things out of storage. His chair returned to its spot. His medals went back on the wall in his office. His photo returned to the mantel where it belonged. One afternoon, Mom and I were planting the last rosebush when she said, "I was so lost in grief and loneliness that I let a predator into our home. I almost let him erase your father completely. I almost lost both my children. But you didn't," I said, squeezing her hand. "We're still here. We're still Dad's family." The next day, I visited Dad's grave alone. I told him everything. "I protected them, Pops. Just like you taught me. I didn't let him win." The wind rustled through the trees and I swear I felt Dad there with me, proud of the woman I'd become. Someone who didn't make excuses for toxic people anymore. Someone who fought for what mattered. Mom joined me at the grave and we stood there together in silence. We'd set new boundaries. We'd learned painful lessons. But we'd survived. Garrett had thought he could replace my father and steal our future. Instead, he lost everything and gave us something unexpected, the strength to remember who we really were. A family built on love, loyalty, and the memory of a man who taught us to never give up. Dad would have been proud. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story or opinions in the comments.